What's up, everybody? Thought I'd be messy today, seeing as Kenzie was on a podcast today, getting a little messy herself, although she was being goaded into some rough questioning. But since Big Brother isn't giving me the mess, let's go back to Love Island for some mess. Kenzie was on the Call Her Daddy podcast, which is a podcast hosted by this Alex Cooper woman, where a lot of women go on there and say controversial things, it feels like. This podcast gets a lot of flack because the Love Islanders that usually appear on this show are always the non-black Love Islanders for the most part. But I feel like people from Love Island should not want to appear on this show because Alice Cooper is always trying to get them to start mess. Because when Huda appeared on this show last year, all it did was start mess for Huda. I feel like if you appear on the show, you're going to get asked some questions and they're going to be leading questions and you're going to say something wrong and then you're going to get all this flack from social media, which Kenzie has started to get with some of the things that were said. Let's listen to some of the questions if we can, and then I'm going to talk about Kenzie's answers. I don't know what the copyright is like for this, so I'm not going to have a lot of thing. You could go watch the clips like I did or watch the podcast if you really want to.
Quickly after movie night, we saw a lot of the women in the villa support Sincere, even being like, I'm team Sincere, like fully supporting him even after watching him on 4K. Why do you think the girls were holding you to a different standard?
So it is a leading question, first of all, because it's like, it's not like the girls during movie night tore Kenzie apart. It was more of like, we can't really defend this right now. Yes, some of the women decided to be Team Sincere after movie night, but it's not like they were attacking Kenzie all the time. But here's Kenzie's answer, and this was the one answer that I feel like she did throw controversial shade. Kenzie said, after getting out, it does feel like sexist. Almost like I'm not a male and it's like I can't move like them. Maybe, I don't know. It was hard and I didn't feel that supported at that time. She did say the women were being sexist with the way they handled both things. That is, I guess, Kenzie's prerogative to feel that way. Do I feel like it adds to some of social media's talking points about the core four? Perhaps. I'm gonna say that Kenzie actually did a good job with most of these questions, though. I feel like she got a lot of leading questions and tried her best to be fair with her answers. This was the one, though, calling the other girls sexist with the way that they handled things. That will get her flack. She also talked about how her friendship with Melanie changed over time. Getting asked about her friendship with Jen and Sol rather than Melanie. Kenzie said there's only so much time in a day, and Melanie was usually pulling Anaya or Trinity, so she was pulling other people too, which I think is a fair point. Melanie was usually pulling those two. I don't know if her feet was held to the fire enough about how she would only trust Jen with certain issues once Sol would walk off from their conversations. I guess I will also say this about Kenzie with a lot of her answers, though, in that she did a good job dodging some of these leading questions, but I still feel like she's trying to play the victim. And Kenzie did do some shit wrong this season, especially with the Caleb situation, especially with acting like she was not lustful this entire season. Like, if Kenzie would own her lustfulness like Corbin, I think there would actually be more respect for her. But, some of these leading questions, oh my God, the other girls were sexist with how I was moving. And then the whole time she was saying she's not lustful. Like, that is just being a liar. But here was another leading question to Kenzie.
Did you feel like there was an unsaid dynamic in the villa that if you were friends with Sol, you were kind of also then going against Melanie to some degree?
So this is a leading question to try and get Kenzie to talk about if there was a rift between the girls and Sol. Kenzie's answer was, I don't agree with that. I was just trying to be there for someone who needed someone. And then the host goes on to try and goad Kenzie to talk about the other girls some more with this question, in my opinion.
Did it feel like Sol was being treated fairly in the villa?
Wanting to see if Kenzie would speak on the supposed bullying accusations of Sol that a lot of conspiracy theorists seem to talk about during the middle of this season that shaped their entire emotional views on this season without real proof, with Sol coming out and saying 3 different things, by the way, which I pointed out when that happened. Kenzie said, I think that it was really hard for Sol to come in when she did. You know, she's a bombshell. She really bombed. I don't know. I did feel for her. A lot of not really giving enough juice to that answer that the host wanted, in my opinion. The host then asked Kenzie about the other day. There was this video going around with some of the Islanders that were eliminated, like I think Corbin and Parmita, Casey, Tiara, Kenzie, Dylan, even Jaden was there at this get together. And in the background, you could hear people talking about Melanie. Kenzie did admit people were talking about Melanie, but it wasn't in that bad of a way. They were just talking about how Melanie got a lot of airtime compared to others and how Jaden felt that way, which, I mean, Jaden got no airtime, but like, was she interesting enough to get some airtime? So Melanie's stands are right now upset with Kenzie for seeming to throw shade on Melanie throughout this interview, which she did. She did say Melanie got a lot of screen time. She said Melanie and Sincere played it the safest of all the couples. I don't know how you can say that about Sincere playing it safe. That doesn't make any sense. It also goes against the answer and the entire question of why did the people treat Sincere differently than you? Overall, the interview was what it was. Kenzie is not that interesting of a person to be giving this interview. And like I said, going on this specific podcast for these Islanders usually results in more harm than good for them. Let's talk about Melanie and Sincere real quick, as people had been noticing that Sincere's following count on Instagram was dropping yesterday, that Melanie must have him getting rid of his roster or, you know, all these IG thoughts in real time. It dropped almost, I think, over 60 people that he was following yesterday. So Melanie trying to lay down the law. But if you have to do all of this with your man, is it really healthy? Melanie's going to try everything she can in the book to try and get Sincere to stay loyal and not dog her out yet again. But this is the same man that went on national television with a bunch of cameras and did it. So if Melanie can't stick around Sincere at all times, how are you going to know for sure that Sincere is not messing around with someone else? Though Sincere maybe is dumb enough to get caught. But as we see, he is good at going behind people's backs. So I don't know. Sincere's family the other day, I talked about it in a video, so we might as well follow up on that. His cousin that had called or compared Anaya to Shrek, and then his excuse was, it's like the book on the date. People have been pulling up some of his other past comments this season, one of which was his comments on Kata's sister's weight.
Kata's sister was just the complete opposite. Somebody said that next to me. There was like, are we sure they're related to Kata? But like,
so people bringing up evidence that he does like to talk about women's appearance. This guy, you know, much like he had an excuse for his comments about Anaya, he had an excuse for this comment about Kata's sister too, kinda.
I got to think for girls that are on the non-skinny side. So to be fair, I didn't see nothing wrong with that. But they are the complete polar opposites. I couldn't believe that. I was like, they don't even look alike.
Again, though, Sincere's family opening their mouths like they did really just made things even worse for Sincere leaving that villa. We haven't really heard much from Sincere and Melanie themselves, but I'm sure we will at some point. Last thing to comment on, it was controversial when Trinity put out this statement on Instagram asking people to be nicer to Zach, and then all of the core 4 people and their men like reposted that on Instagram too. So of course a lot of Casey and TT stands saying, well, Casey's getting it the worst, why can't you stick up for Casey too? which I think is asking a lot of Trinity, or especially Anaya, to be the ones to lead that charge. Because I haven't seen Casey or TT put out statements against the hate that Anaya has gotten all season and continues still to get from their fans. I mean, we still have people out there saying that Anaya was a bigger villain this season than Sincere, that Anaya was the true villain of this past season, and I cannot think of a more asinine statement. It's like people will see something happening with their own eyes, hear something happening with their own ears, but because they've had an agenda all season long, they have to stick to it, even though they sound dumb as fuck. But yes, that is the latest agenda against Anaya. This is like, what, the 122nd agenda against Anaya this season. She was somehow a bigger villain than Sincere. You know, the person that just tried to stick with her initial couple, who did choose Casey, and then after Casey didn't choose her, finally moved on with Carl and maybe found a little happiness. And they seem very up on each other a lot since leaving that villa. They're going very strong right now since leaving that villa. I think Carl does seem obsessed with her right now, and vice versa. Obviously that can always change, but I guess people are still trying their best to villainize Anaya with any means possible.